Hi, I'm Matt Slauson. I'm one of the engineering and technology teachers at Skaneateles High School, and I'm part of the master teacher program in the central New York region. Like many of you, I'm stuck at home. I happen to be stuck in my shop. I have a pretty nice shop at home where I collect and build and repair musical instruments. What I thought I'd talk to you little bit and do a little video on is finding the engineering and technology and math and science in the everyday objects that we use and are interested in. So I'm interested in musical instruments, and so therefore many of my projects that we do in my classes have a music kind of spin to them. And in order to get kids interested in what we do, I use musical instruments, and I think it's a pretty good choice of topics to work on with kids to pique their interest. So what I thought I'd do is talk about the instruments students build. So this is a ukulele. It's a concert-sized ukulele that I prototype. So we do a small mass production of these instruments, and usually from year to year it varies from 15 to 25 or 30 instruments, depending on the size of the class and how many extras we build. So the basic plans for each instrument is the same. So we go through mass producing parts of the instruments. The kids start with raw materials, and then they manufacture these parts. So in addition to learning the handcrafts of creating the musical instruments, like bending the sides and cutting things out and shaping and shaping the necks and all that kind of stuff, students learn about CNC control, because things like the bridge they have to design in a solid modeling program, and they create the GNM code and post-process it to create the bridge. So they'll learn manufacturing techniques and about things like the cutters that are used, speeds and feeds and whatnot. So they learn a little bit about manufacturing techniques. They learn a little bit about engineering design, because not only do the parts have to look good, they have to function properly. So they have to be able to create a part that not only looks good to them, but also functions and doesn't change the sound or the playability of the instrument. In addition to that, there's a number of science and math concepts that kids learn along the way, and so I thought I'd go over a few of those. Now you can teach these concepts just by borrowing an instrument from the music department at your school, or maybe you got a guitar at home or a violin or something of that nature. So you can talk about and teach those fundamental principles just by borrowing an instrument. You don't have to make instruments to get something out of this. So most of you probably know that the fundamental note that a stringed instrument plays, like this is a G, is based on the length of the string and what the material the string's made out of, and the tension on the string. So by tensioning that string to a G, I can play that fundamental note, and it's based on the length of that string. If I press the 12th fret right there and play the same string, you'll notice that the pitch of the note is a lot higher. In fact, the pitch of the note is the octave, which is twice the frequency of the fundamental note that I played. So the frequencies doubled. So what does that mean for the period of the wave? The period of the wave is the length of the wave, the time it takes one wave to occur. So the period of the wave is cut in half. So if I increase the frequency, I decrease the period. So mathematically, they are inversely proportional to one another. So if I know the period, I can figure out the frequency. So I can figure out the pitch of the note, G, A440, whatever that happens to be, by knowing the period of the wave. So period and frequency are two mathematical concepts and little bit of physics concepts that you would be able to teach. In addition to that, there's a mathematical proportion between each of the notes. So you can go download a chart off one of the instrument makers like StewMac, and you can see that there is a progression. So you'll notice that the frets decrease by a set amount each time until they're smaller and smaller and closer together. So there is proportion when you're looking at these stringed instruments. So that's a ukulele. And I play G. This instrument is a wooden flute I built. Now I can play the same note. I can play a G, and the way that's generated is by setting up a vibration in the tube by the way I blow across the embouchure hole. So by changing the length of the tube, by covering up these holes, I can change the note that I play. So I can play different notes. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting, if I cover these first three holes and play, I didn't change the number of holes I was covering, but I played the octave. So the way the sound is generated on a flute, the edge of the embouchure hole acts as a reed and sets up a vibration in the tube. So the vibration in the tube, the fundamental vibration for G, and by overblowing it, I can get the octave. I can also play semitones, but they're a little harder to get. So that's a wood flute. I can do a metal flute, and it sounds different as well. So reed instruments like clarinets and oboes do the same thing. By vibrating the reed, it sets up a wave inside the column of air, and it creates different frequencies. On the bench here, I'm in the middle of repairing. Let's see if I can swing this camera over. Yep. This is a bass saxophone. This is a huge instrument. Stretched out, if I stretched out and straightened all the tubing, it would be considerably taller than I am. So in order to play a G on this instrument, I would have to cover up all the tone holes down to about here. So this generates a sound in the instrument by setting up a vibration with a reed and then covering the tone holes by changing the length of the tube by covering up with a pad. So that's a bass saxophone. So one of the things you might be, see if I can get my camera to sit right. One of the things you might be asking yourself is, well, if you played G on those instruments, how come they sounded different from one another, even though you were playing a G? So when you play a note on an instrument, whether you're plucking a string or playing a flute or a clarinet or any instrument pretty much for that matter, the fundamental note that you play is the loudest, has the greatest amplitude. So the loudest note that I hear when I play that string is a G. But within that note, if we were to graph it with vernier test equipment, and we've done that in our classes, you would see the G as the highest amplitude waveform, and then you would see within that other notes, semitones and subtones of that note. You would see different amplitudes for those. And so on a flute, clarinet, oboe, all those things are different. So a clarinet sounds like a clarinet because all those subtones are at different amplitudes than are on a flute or a clarinet or oboe, bassoon, whatever, stringed instrument for that matter. So within this note, you're getting the G, but you're also getting lots of other notes. So you're changing the period and the frequency by changing either the length of the string or the length of the air column. So period, frequency, amplitude, and the loudness of the sound are all concepts related into what makes an instrument sound like it sounds. Hope you enjoy. Good luck figuring out everything and hope we get back to school quick.